Hey guys, Dan here with the Battlefield Curator, and we're going to talk about how you can get into military surplus collecting for really cheap. In today's market, with the prices of military surplus collectibles actually being extremely expensive and unaffordable for a lot of young collectors or young enthusiasts, it's kind of hard to get into the collecting game. The online shops can price them a lot higher than what you would see in a local small place. If you go to like your gun stores or your pawn shops even, you're still going to find a lot of them have overpriced and overvalued military surplus collectibles, and even sometimes fair value is very pricey and hard to afford. So the reality is, it's just hard to get into military surplus collecting at a young age when you're just starting out. If you think about it, one of the cheapest and most likely free ways that people get into military surplus collecting is through an inheritance where their relatives had bought some collectibles that they used them for hunting maybe, or just took them to the range or enjoyed them, or maybe even brought them back from combat. If you have relatives that are collectors themselves and you show enthusiasm, they might even have it in their will, or you could always ask them, like, hey, Pa, what's going to happen with all these collectibles, once you start getting of the older age, And, he might say, oh, I'll never sell these, or, I was thinking about keeping them in the family, but, sometimes these family members will sell stuff off just for the money. And if you show great enthusiasm and being a steward of collectible military surplus, then you are, in essence, in the right line of mindset for somebody to say, okay, well, this my grandson over here really likes these things, and I'd like to pass it down to him. So he might put you in the will, or he might just start, when he gets of older age, he might just start liquidating his collection. There's probably a better strategic way to go about it, but that's just an example, and you shouldn't go around to your relatives and start asking them for their collectibles when they die. That's just wrong. All right, so the number two way, and the way that I've actually been able to acquire a lot of military surplus collectibles for really cheap, is networking with other collectors. Whether it be going to gun shops and talking to some folks, talking to the enthusiasts that also go there and look at the same things you're looking at. When you go there, you network, you build a relationship with somebody, and maybe they want to sell something so they could buy something else, and you might pick up something for really cheap, or maybe they just want to get rid of something because in their eyes they don't want to use it, it's crap, but you see, you find a value in that, so you say, hey, yeah, I'll take that off your hands. That's one of the ways that I've talked to people and have gotten pretty good deals on military surplus, and I've gotten pretty good deals on surplus ammo as well in that aspect. And even paying like $10 to get to a gun show, you might talk to somebody, and let's say a fair market value for a weapon is like $800, but let's say they sell it to you, you talk to them and they sell it to you for $300 less, and you pay $10, but you pretty much get something for really cheap, a lot cheaper than what it's worth. So that's just paying the $10 for a gun show might be worth it in some cases. So yeah, just when you go out and about, just talk to people, network, and meet other enthusiasts, and enjoy the hobby of collecting with them. All right, so another way that I've gotten into military surplus collecting for really cheap is buying project guns and working on them. Not all project guns are going to be cheap, because you got to look at what parts you would need to repair these, collectible surplus firearms that may not be in the best condition. So you have to do a little bit of analysis, and you have to do it kind of quick. So if you go to a shop and they've got a sporterized Lee Enfield for like a couple $100, you got to be quick to say, okay, I can get a stock on this website. Let me go look on here, see if I can find these parts. I could find an original magazine here. I could find this and that. And you do your own price comparison with all these different parts, and you say, yeah, I could do that. It's just, you're just going to have to put a lot of time and effort into it. So at the end of the day, you might have a Lee Enfield that, you paid $200 for, but you got it back to original military configuration for another $200, and so your total cost in there is like $400. Compared to other surplus rifles, that's pretty cheap. And maybe that Lee Enfield's an older one and it's got a really good bore. And maybe you think, hey, look, this is a World War I rifle. I got it for extraordinarily cheap compared to what you can get them for already, as a collector's item and in good condition. So project guns, be on the lookout for project guns. Do a little cost analysis on parts if you see one, and try to be quick because somebody else might be looking at that same project gun and say, hey, I can fix that. So yeah, project guns. So when we talk about getting into military surplus collecting for cheap, let's also talk about trade deals. Trading, you don't put any money down. You just say, hey, I've got this and you've got that. I want that. So I'll give you this for that. That's a trade. And that's a really good way to get into military surplus collecting for cheap. So let's say maybe you've got some silver coins or something that you've accumulated. You were a coin collector and you want to trade somebody some coins for a rifle, right? Let's say you collected military surplus gear and somebody wants your surplus gear and you want some rifle that they have. There we go back into networking. So you got to really know people yet again. But maybe you have a new firearm and they have an old one and you want the old one and they want the new one. So trading is a good way to get into military surplus collecting as well. If you're finding value in this video, by the way, be sure to hit that like button and also subscribe if you haven't. It really helps us out. Thanks. Now moving on to the last way to get into military surplus collecting for cheap. When we talk about military surplus collecting in general, you might see a cheap rifle, but like let's say you see a carcano and they're really cheap. Well, how hard is it to find ammo for that carcano? Let's say you definitely like going to the range a lot with your collectibles. A carcano, you're probably not going to take out to the range too much, and it's going to be not worth it really if you have to go out of your way to go find ammo for really expensive, and now you're spending more on ammo within the first 100 rounds than you did spending it on the carcano rifle itself. So when you talk about collecting military surplus for cheap, let's talk about finding a military surplus rifle that also takes cheap ammo. That way you can enjoy them at the range. Right now, I think if you can find an SKS for around $400, maybe $500 now is probably more of a fair deal. Then, a 7.62 by 3.9 is really cheap. Not too long ago, I saw a Mosin rifle for $330. And I think that's still at that shop at All American Firearms in Aiken. But at the same time, you can find 7.62 by 54R for really cheap. So when it comes down to military surplus collecting and you're just trying to get into it for cheap, find a rifle that's cheap, but also find the ammo for that rifle that will be cheap as well. So that's a big difference between carcanos and Mosins, is the ammo, the cost of ammo there. Well, let me know your thoughts in the comments section. Like, what do you guys think about collecting super cheap? I think as you get older, you kind of get out of the cheaper collectibles and you get into stuff that's more expensive. You can also liquidate some of your cheaper rifles and maybe get like one more expensive rifle. So what have you guys done to get into the surplus collecting hobby for really cheap? Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your strategies. And if we share information like this, it helps out other newbies and helps them get into surplus collecting. Because I think today is kind of hard for a young enthusiast to get into the collecting world. So with that being said, be sure to learn history and curate history. Make it a great day.